Many of us think that betrayal in marriage is just between two people. But what if someone else is behind the betrayal? I never thought I'd run into this until I discovered that my wife's sticky betrayal was being meddled with by a whole mother-in-law's friend. Ready to find out how I uncovered this insidious plot? I met Olesya when I was in my 30s. Well, she was 23. I had a small, but still my own business. I lived in a rented apartment at the time, and with all the money, not long before I met Lesya, I finally bought myself an expensive, decent car. That's what a lot of young guys do. And this rash act of mine almost left me a pauper after marriage. And that's how it was. To cut a long story short, me and this Lesya started dating and it looked like we were getting married. I say to her, well, maybe after the wedding I should sell my car and the money to spend on an apartment, or at least part of it. And Lesya stopped me at that moment. My mom will give us her apartment, sort of for the wedding. She has long wanted to live in the countryside in his and Dad's out-of-town house. We talked to her about it. We'll pay for her out-of-town repairs, but she'll kind of give us that apartment to live in. I'd agreed, and after we got married, so it turns out we already have an apartment, albeit one that needs some repairs too, plus a nice car. And like we are a young family and already kind of have everything, but unfortunately, all this was good for a short time. Literally immediately Lesya and I had a daughter. But after a couple of years of maternity leave, all of a sudden there were surprises that I never expected. The starting point for them was, oddly enough, a friend of my mother-in-law. At least I think so. I will digress and tell you that this friend lives hundreds of kilometers from our city, but regularly comes here like for business. What kind of business could be here? I found out a little later. On the plane back and forth, it is not particularly a flight, and this almost every week or two, like a bayonet, well, here is here. And it turned out that this friend of my mother-in-law had a lover in our city. The husband in the big city kind of has a problem with that part, but this mother-in-law's friend in this town of ours kind of has an old memory. There's a long-time kind of mate here, and that's the mate that she flies in to Postaras in a month. It's a friend of my mother-in-law's, and she knows my wife. They've been friends with my mother-in-law for a long time, and sometimes when she comes to visit us on business trips, my wife would go there to visit her mother in the country. What do you have to do there? I asked my wife, and of course, I objected to her going there to see those two ladies. My wife answered me, saying, to get away, I cannot go to my mother. The child is also good in nature and everything. In short, to keep her at home by force is too expensive. From time to time, she would take the child and go to them for all this chit-chat. And then on one such trip, on my return from it, I suddenly felt a kind of coldness from my wife. I asked her a question and heard in response that it was all kind of like I was imagining things. I sat there, I thought about it, and I realized that apparently my mother and her friend were washing something about me. Well, plus the fact that both our mother-in-law and her friend is not one of the poor, as you probably already realized. And this too, apparently, is bearing fruit. My wife goes to see them. They talk about the well-to-do and holy life without work, having fun. That's probably why my wife is not in the mood when she gets home. But if she just wasn't in the mood, that's okay. There's more. Around this same period, I noticed that my wife, pardon the intimate part, no initiative. I was having work problems at the time. This, that, everything. Suddenly I remembered that we had not had sex for 2 weeks, and I had not heard a word from her. Well, something was starting to look a little too much like horns, I thought at the time. And impressed by all listed above, decided to rummage in our general laptop, so to speak, deeper. I opened her social networks, looked through it, and there was some unknown for me comrade, writing to her about love, but in a very joking and main form. I wrote to him on behalf of my wife and asked him to send me his number. He did. I call and ask, well, who are you? Nice man. Actually. But I did not find anything special in the conversation. The man was surprised in general that Olesya was married, but that's what I mean, he asked me. We did not have anything. I heard about the husband for the first time in my life from you. If you want, we can meet, of course. But what is the point? We didn't have anything. If we have a husband, I get it. No more questions. To cut a long story short, even though that call did not bring me any special information, I noted to myself that the fact that the lady was married should be one of the first things a woman says when a man hits on her. But apparently that phrase did not exist in their communication, at least not until I intervened myself. Well, let's note that to ourselves. Then it's July. My wife is taking the baby and going out of town to her mom's for at least a few weeks while I'm still working. Plus, one of the rooms needed quite a deep repair, and I decided that just when they are not, I do it quietly. But to skip ahead and tell you that this was no longer destined to happen. The first 2 weeks of their departure, I was busy at work around the clock, the repairs almost did not move, and after those 2 weeks my wife came herself. Then again, we hadn't seen them for 2 weeks, and then suddenly there was a kiss on the cheek, and that was it. Is there a problem, Lesya? If so, you'd better tell it like it is. It seems to me that our relationship has come to a standstill. We need a break from each other and so on. But everything is clear. I waited until she went to wash, and without expecting myself, for the first time in my life, I looked in her bag, and actually found in the compartment with medicines and contraceptives. My wife comes out in a towel. I give her this tray. What is this? And most importantly, where and for what? Of course she refuses. It's been lying here for years. You never know where we could have been. I looked at the date of manufacture. The product is really not new. But who can guarantee that it was the only one lying here before? Maybe in my hands is what's left of their whole package, especially since in life, a man usually wears them and buys them. In general, this product in the pocket of the bag is not a 100% indicator, and it is very possible that it really was lying there alone for a year. But the level of mistrust at that time was already higher than the highest. I did not believe her that night, of course, and as soon as she fell asleep, got into our shared laptop again, opened it, and actually there and saw the beginning of our end. While my wife was out of town, her friends missed her, and in social networking one of these chickens asks her, "How is your dimma?" My wife did not take her computer with her when she was out of town, so she has not seen this message from last week. Since I haven't introduced myself to you, I'll just say that my name isn't Dimma at all. At that moment, I leaned back on my desk and had a double feeling. On the one hand, if I now begin to unravel what Dimma is and why he is yours, the result is certainly not going to please me. But on the other hand, let least so and finally, then I will not know how many years to walk around with horns, guess, but nothing specific. To be honest, some part of me at that moment even rejoiced, or something, but only a small part. Anyway, I have to try to figure out this Dimma somehow. I scroll through all the correspondence on my wife's social networks, and of course there was nothing like that there. Everything was quiet there, except for this message from a friend. And if my wife had not gone out of town, she would have seen this message first, and in the first 24 hours, and would have quickly erased it. And that would be it. Anyway, I looked at the list of friends and wife, and not a single Dimma there, of course, where. The wife would be gone to her mother the next day, so I had to think of something, preferably now. And I did come up with, well, almost me. After all, I had to spend almost half the night on the forums on the internet. My imagination would not have come to this. But here's how to figure out the number of Dimma, and how do I prove that they had something now, sitting on the chair. It turns out that one of the advisors on the forum did this kind of thing, which in the morning I did as well. I took another SIM card, which I had from work, and from that phone number I texted my wife. I wrote that I was an acquaintance of Dimma, and I supposedly knew, and that he was married, and that Olesya, that is my wife, is also married. While my wife was asleep, I wrote to my wife from this number that I would tell everything to this Dima's wife and to Lesya's husband, Emi. And also these details will become public and in our not-so-big city. And what do you think? The wife in the morning, of course, did not get up alone. Quickly left as if to go to the store, and I began to call me on this number 10 times, some unknown phone. I picked up the phone. There was a man there. Well, it looks like our Dima. My wife, seeing a text message from a stranger who would tell everyone everything, immediately ran to call and tell Dima. He took my wife's left phone number, from which she receives text messages, and immediately started calling him. I never picked up the phone again. My wife came home and literally had no face on her. I asked her what was wrong with the mood and showed her Dima's phone number on my own cell phone. In front of her, I dialed it and put it on speakerphone. Of course, I said a few nice words to him, but I had more complaints about my wife than about the unknown Dima somewhere in the phone. What I don't understand, Lesya, is why we had to make this whole vinaigrette. Love is over, but it's bad, but it happens. Tell me why you have been racking my brain for months. What am I waiting for here? Saving up money for repairs and stuff like that on the list. Anyway, she didn't tell me anything clear, and she didn't tell me. Well, now to the fun. The question of divorce, of course, stood up before her, and me at the same time. Well, then surely both had no doubts that there's nothing to glue. And his side, or those who divorced, it would seem that ahead was a whole mess. Property division and all that stuff, but no. The apartment, which my mother-in-law gave us, was still recorded in her name, and accordingly, the apartment something will remain in their family. And the nice car that I miraculously did not sell before the wedding, as it was mine, and so it remains. After all, I, with all the money I had at my disposal, bought it then before the wedding, and accordingly, it is not subject to sharing. In general, in the end, the price of my mistake in the form of marriage is part of the money I gave my mother-in-law to repair the country house. And if I had sold the car, and would have bought an apartment with this money during the marriage, I would now have only half of the car, if not less. That's the way it is. By the way, just then I thought, is it not with this Dima? I talked that first time, when I saw the message in social networking dinners, and he swore and swore that he knew nothing about her husband. But unfortunately, there was a nickname instead of a name, as far as I remember, and I can't find his number now. Well, to hell with all of them. Well, to finish the story in a funny way, I can only say that while I was transferring my files from the common laptop before the divorce, I found this friend of my mother-in-law in my wife's social network, and in her friends, I found her husband. I wrote him then why his wife was traveling a few hundred kilometers to her hometown, and I think that soon this friend of my mother-in-law will have to go to the country to live with her mother-in-law permanently. She thought her secret was well hidden, but she didn't know that I noticed a mysterious bag in her closet. When I found out what was inside that bag, my heart sank. This is the story of how I uncovered my wife's betrayal and had brutal revenge. My wife Ksiusha and I had been married a little over 4 years. We got together when we were both well into our adult years. And without a lot of nervousness or emotional roller coaster, we lived through all those 4 pretty good years, I think. For the past few months, however, looking at the perpetual jolts in my friends' relationships, I somehow began to wonder. With us, unlike them, everything is always quiet. We do not argue, do not quarrel over nothing. In general, we live, and in general, both of us are happy with everything. Is that normal? Or in this case, should we also think about it or be wary? And it was as if I could feel it in my gut. Lack of problems, as it turns out, is not good either. And I'm going to tell you how it is when a relationship is all hush-hush. One day, Xenia had a cold, and all the household chores fell on my shoulders, and that included shopping. My wife told me to buy all this stuff, and on the way back, I need this and this at the drugstore. She handed me the list, and I threw on my jacket and went to a nearby store. It was typical autumn weather outside. I wished I had brought a hat, but I didn't have to go back to the 10th floor to get it. I quickly procured everything I had on that piece of paper, and all that was left was the pharmacy. A loud bell on the door rang, and as soon as I went to the window, a voice came out. "Good day," they said to me, and I poked my face through the small window at the counter and saw my familiar pharmacist there. "What are you doing here now?" I asked him. It was Peter, an old acquaintance of mine and Zinya's. After graduation, he worked in some other part of the city. "And now here," "Yes, now here," he answered, and after exchanging a few words with him, I handed him a piece of paper with a list. "Oh," and I shouted after him when there was not a soul in the pharmacy, "Give me that one there." I pointed to the shelf on the far side where they sold contraceptives. He brought me what I needed, put it on the shelf near the window, and asked me if I had a discount card. "I don't have, and never have," I answered him, and it turned out that the price of everything in front of me now was calculated with a discount. Without it, the price tag would almost double. "Well, my wife forgot to pass that," he asked me, and explained that my Ksyusha a long time ago has been buying only from them, and she certainly has a discount card. Man, it's raining and windy outside. I have to go back with the bags now, and then I have to come back here again. Let's put something away. I see here both what's needed and what my wife recommended to buy supposedly as a reserve. Let's just take all the spare stuff out of here now, and tomorrow I'll go in after work and buy it all up after work anyway." He agreed, and the first thing he did was take out of that little bag those very rubber products. And then something else too. Hey, we should keep these," I told him, and picked them up again. But Peter's answer almost knocked me off my feet. "So it was your wife just 3 days ago who bought them?" "I think 2 or 3 packs. I don't remember exactly now." I was silent, and at that moment, I didn't even know what to think. I've been buying all these products myself all my life. My wife, as far as I can remember, has never bought them. "I see. Okay." I paid for the purchase and headed home. Frankly, while I rode in the elevator, I thought I would find these tires or in the bedside table or in a drawer over the bathroom. Well, whether my wife bought everything you need, and at the same time, while there is a discount card, took it at once, but no. I found them neither by the bathroom or under the bathroom or even in the closet. I wondered if the discount card didn't work for me this time. I sat down across from my wife's sweet face and wondered how I was going to figure it all out. I didn't buy everything here, but the stuff we definitely need. Of course we do. Otherwise, why would I have written you all this? I asked her this question for a reason. I needed an excuse to go to her car and see if I could find something interesting in there. Again, throwing on a jacket and going to the pharmacy for the second time today, I took the keys to her car. In the car, behind the passenger seat, I actually found this packet, and it was missing 2 of the 3 pieces. Reaching the destination and talking to Petya for the second time today, I found out that such a purchase was made by my wife for the second time in the past 2 months, and earlier, unfortunately, I could not find out here Peter before this time, as I said here does not work. How can I help my wife to confess? I thought then. I have these products in her hands and the approximate duration of her hobbies here. I know that she buys them at least 2 or 3 times, and as you understand, to make with such little evidence to confess to a hard try. And I think that most would still and did not confess. I started the story with the fact that our relationship was as if even overly calm, and now holding all this evidence. I think I figured out why. She just does not care about me anymore. She lives in comfort, but apparently finds it too boring. Well, it is as it is. If this is so, then this evidence for our serious conversation should be enough. And they were enough. I went back to our place and showed her everything that I described to you above. In short, she was confused from her own words. She wants emotions, clarification of relations, that today was a scandal and tomorrow in relations was the calm. And then the opposite. In short, it was some young and very brazen guy from among students of senior courses. She does not know why she contacted him, but to loosen her he even suited. I will skip all her requests for recourse. I will only say that I had to send her away. Even with all her sniveling and exclamations, I would have let you relax somewhere, and with someone too, if you had asked me to. In short, I now live alone, and I am glad not only that I belong to myself and do not depend on anyone, but also that thanks to the rubber, I not only figured out the cheating, but also did not catch anything from Xenia.